Welcome back to the Self-Starter Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Lauren. I'm so excited that you're here this week. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you're new to the YouTube channel, welcome. I'm Nicole Lauren, a photographer and attorney, and I have a passion for helping other creatives, other photographers, and building businesses that they love. And there's a lot of different content on this channel, mainly focused around creatives and photographers in business, entrepreneurship, owning your own business, that type of thing. So if you like that type of content, stick around. But today we're going to be talking about something that is photographer specific, but something that I think could be really helpful for you if you are trying to hire in your business. As photographers, we definitely like to hire second shooters a lot of time for wedding days. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what second shooters are, what you should be looking for when you're looking to hire a second shooter, and even some tips for you if you are a second shooter and you're trying to get into, maybe you're trying to get into wedding photography, you've never done wedding photography before, and you're trying to know like, okay, if I'm hired as a second shooter, what do I do? And how can I be the best help to the lead photographer? So we're going to talk about all of that today. And I think this is such an important topic because this is something that I feel like no one really talks about. It's kind of just understood. And I don't know, when you're first starting out in wedding photography, it's sometimes really hard to get your foot in the door because you don't have experience, you don't have portfolio. So it's really hard for you to book your own clients. And the two biggest ways that I booked my own clients was through second shooting and also through styled shoots, hosting styled shoots on my own. And that's something else we can talk about later, styled shoots. But today I really want to talk about second shooting and why it's so important and really helpful when you're just trying to break into a new market. Okay, let's talk about the role of second shooters on the wedding day. Let's talk about like what you are supposed to do and what you aren't supposed to do. And some of these things might be a little controversial. I think that there is a lot that people can think about second shooting that people might disagree with, and some of these things that I'm about to tell you might be controversial as well. And if you disagree, that's totally fine. Your opinion is valid, and I'm just telling you what I think is the right way to think about second shooting and the best and most effective way. But if you disagree, that's totally okay. We can agree to disagree. The first thing is that you are there as a second shooter. You're there to try new things and to learn. That's your primary purpose. And you're there to basically just help as much as you can, but also to just try out new things. So if you have a new lens, if you have a new pose that you're wanting to try out, if you have a certain type of style you're wanting to shoot in that you've never done before, when you're second shooting, that's the best place to do that. Now, obviously, you don't want to just go crazy if there's a time where you're shooting by yourself, or like, let's say for the ceremony, the first kiss, you're probably not going to want to try something totally crazy because that's a time where the lead photographer is probably going to need your photos most. You know, family portraits or something like that where the lead photographer's photos are going to be king and they probably won't need your photos for that portion. It's a great time to break out a new lens, break out a new technique, break out a new pose, try something new. The stakes are so low. Like your photos, yes, while they're valuable, they're not like the end all be all of the wedding day. So it's a great chance for you to just get out there, try new things, and test things out that you might not have done before. If it's your own wedding day, you're going to be a lot more hesitant to try out new things because the stakes are a lot higher, and if you mess up or if you do something wrong, there's going to be a lot of disappointment and a lot more problems. So second shooting, take it as an opportunity to try new things, test out a new lens, and also just to learn and see what the other photographer is doing and what you can learn from them. The second thing you're there to do, though, with that being said, is that you are not there primarily to build your portfolio. Now, second shooting is a great way to build your portfolio and to gain experience, but your mindset when you show up on the wedding day and you're there to help the lead photographer, your primary purpose is not self-serving. And I think this is where it can be a little controversial. Like, I think that there is so much benefit to you shooting with someone else and being able to build your portfolio and market yourself as a wedding photographer. But that should not be your primary goal. Your primary goal is not to build your portfolio. Your primary goal is to serve. You're there to serve your lead photographer and you're there to serve their clients as if they're your own. And so aside from like all the things that you want to get in your portfolio, maybe it's detail shots, maybe it's couples photos, that really should be secondary to you serving the lead photographer really well and serving their clients really well. So if the lead photographer says, hey, I need you to go get groomsmen getting ready photos, you immediately say, yes, you have a great attitude, and you go do it. That probably is not like the most beautiful photos to add to your portfolio. Let's face it, groomsmen getting ready photos usually are non-existent. Like, they don't really do much except get dressed and a lot of times just drink alcohol. So like, there's really not much to it. But your calling and your assignment and your responsibility being a second shooter is to serve the lead photographer in that way. And your needs and your wants are always second to that. So I just want to stress that. It's not that you have to like totally lay down and die and like not like think about things that would help your portfolio. Obviously, you always want to be thinking about, okay, what can I add? What experience can I add to my portfolio with this wedding? Is there anything I can focus on that would be really good for me to expand in my portfolio? That's a great thing to think, but that's always going to be second to serving your lead photographer and serving your couples. So let's talk about some ways that you can serve really well if you are a second shooter. So the first thing is anticipating their needs. So you always want to anticipate your lead photographer's needs. This is something that you're going to grow in as a photographer as you continue on. If you've never shot a wedding before, if you've never second shot a wedding before, it's understandable that you might not know what's going on. Your lead photographer hopefully should know that it's not it is your first rodeo. It's not your second or third time. It's like your first time. You should probably let them know that. And they should be more gracious to you and more patient with you and taking more time to explain things to you and educate you, and that's perfectly okay. Obviously, you don't, like, nothing that you do the first time you're going to be a pro at, and you shouldn't expect that out of yourself. They shouldn't expect that out of you. But as much as you can, try to read the mind of your lead photographer. Try to anticipate their needs. That works in two ways. So first, you're serving your lead photographer really well if you can anticipate their needs. Second, you're also sticking out in their minds, because most people are not unselfish, right? Like, they're not going to just think about someone else above themselves. That's like not a human thing to do. So, typically. So if you are thinking about them and serving them really well and anticipating their needs and, getting them a glass of water when they need it, or realizing they need a different type of lens, going ahead and getting it out of their bag for them, carrying their bag from place to place if they have their hands full, like things like that, that's going to make you stick out. And if you're wanting more second shooter jobs, then they're more likely to reach out to you if they're like, hey, I saw Nicole took a lot of initiative. I saw that she really was trying to make my job a lot easier, so I'm going to reach out to her next time I need a second shooter. And so that can definitely guarantee some job security for you. So 2 reasons why you definitely want to do that. Obviously, there's a lot more, and you also want to be a good human, so that's another thing in and of itself. The other thing that I want to say here, another way to serve your the couple well and your lead photographer well, is being proactive. So not only just anticipating their needs, but taking that action and being proactive and saying, okay, I can foresee how this is going to go. Oh, okay, this lighting situation is not great. Let me just go ahead and make a suggestion to change it in this way. Oh, they're going to need to pose the bridal party, so let me just go ahead and pose them for the lead photographer. Things like that, just kind of being one step ahead of everyone else, being on top of it. That also makes the timeline move really smoothly. That also makes like just everyone in a much happier state. If we're not just feeling like we're running behind, you're actually ahead of the game. That's unusual on a wedding day, so that's really, really good. Another thing that you can do to serve really well on a wedding day is just having a really willing attitude, and you'd be surprised how far that goes. Honestly, there's so much I could say here, but there is a shortage of what's a good way to put this? There's a shortage of good attitudes in the world, I would say, and a lot of people don't want to work. A lot of people don't want to put in the effort and take responsibility, claim responsibility for what's theirs. And so if you can do that, if you can own your job and act confidently and be in that role 100%, and be really willing to just do whatever is asked of you and not think anything is beneath you. Like, if you need to carry the bride's train, you do it and you own it and you own the cause, and like that is your job and you're stoked about it. Even if you don't feel like it on the inside, that's what you're portraying on the outside. So I just, that sets you so head and shoulders above everyone else. just being willing, just having a good attitude. When you're a second shooter, it's a lot easier for you to have some more downtime, maybe notice some things that the lead photographer is a little too busy to see. And there might be areas where you're like not happy, maybe you're complaining about something. That's never okay to do in front of a guest, in front of the clients especially. If you have something that you need to tell the lead photographer, pull them aside, take them to a private space so that you guys can talk it out together. You always want to be having a nice countenance. You want to have a smile on your face all the time. I'm not saying that you have to be untruthful or that you have to just like lay it on thick and just be like overly nice and dramatic, but you need to have a pleasant look on your face. People are watching you. You stick out like a sore thumb, especially if you're wearing like all black. If you're at the front of the church looking back and taking photos, people are gonna see you. So just making sure that you're always aware of like how you appear to other people, how you look to other people is really, really important. The last thing is in the ways to serve well on wedding days as a second shooter is that you should really educate yourself. And I think there's like a wealth of information that you can get from YouTube videos, from blogs, from Facebook groups even, other photographers that maybe you could have coffee dates with. Even if you've never shot a wedding before, you can definitely get a lot of this information beforehand. I also want to say that I have a course that's called the Wedding Walkthrough. It's actually a chance for you to be able to second shoot with me virtually. We go through a full wedding day all the way from getting ready and details photos all the way until the sparkler exit. We walk through every single part of the wedding day, shooting it together. It's a mix of sit-down videos, kind of like this, where I'm talking through my process, talking through my thinking for each part of the wedding day, and then you actually see me in real time photographing it. So if you've never shot a wedding before, or if you've maybe just shot a couple and you're still really nervous about it, I would highly recommend that course to you. I'm going to leave a link for it in the description below. But that is something that's going to be an invaluable resource for you to be able to kind of get that experience without ever having to leave your couch, without ever having to book a client, without ever having to work with another photographer in real time. But even if it's not that course, I would say that you definitely want to educate yourself as much as possible before that first second shooting opportunity so that you feel confident, you feel like you know what you're doing. When they tell you to photograph details, you're not just like, what does that mean? I don't know how to put them together, where to go, like what do you mean details? What does that mean? And if you have that knowledge and you have a little bit of that expertise under your belt, then the lead photographer is going to feel more confident letting you shoot solo, letting you shoot certain parts of the day, which is going to definitely make you a marketable second shooter. All right, we just talked about ways to serve your lead photographer and their clients really well. Let's move on to payment. So this is something that a lot of people want to talk about, and I feel like it's not really talked about very transparently. So we're gonna kind of just tackle this together and just be totally transparent with you. So payment for second shooting ranges anywhere from like $20 an hour to I've seen $100 per hour. It could even be more than that, but it all really just depends on the location that you're in. A lot of it depends on the experience that you have, the equipment that you have, the type of wedding that they have booked. If it's a really expensive wedding, then they might give you a higher second shooting rate. Some of it might depend on whether it's an out-of-town wedding, whether there's travel included, if there's any extras that lead photographer is giving you that could affect the price as well. But I would say a good range to kind of think about with about maybe 2 or 3 years of experience would be around the 40 per hour range, maybe higher. If you're just starting out, it might be a little bit lower than that. And if you're a little bit more experienced like I am, it'd probably be a little bit higher than that. But I would say around $40 per hour is probably average. And the nice thing about second shooting is that you're being paid per hour to be there on site on the event or wedding day. And you're helping the lead photographer, so you are not really responsible for directing a lot of things unless they have you doing something by yourself, which could happen. You're not responsible for any of the editing or post-processing. So that's really nice. You're just there the day of and then your job is over. So it's a great way to just kind of get your foot in the door, especially with wedding photography, and not have a lot of commitment attached to it, which is really, really great. Now let's move on to if you are a photographer and you're looking to hire someone to shoot with you. That is really awesome that you're at that point, if you are. So we're going to talk through some of the points that I think you should consider if you are wanting to hire someone to shoot with you. So first, you need to decide if you're going to prioritize skill and experience, or if you're okay with someone a little bit less experienced but has a really willing attitude. I think that's really key. Personally, I have interns that I've hired in my business. They're actually family members that shoot with me consistently. And I really like working with them. They are not the most experienced in terms of like professional experience, but they've now shot with me for over a year. They do all my weddings with me, so they are very experienced, but they don't have their own businesses. I actually prefer that. I like that method because I was able to teach them from the ground up. They can now shoot manual mode. They know what my business is like in and out, and I can train them exactly how I want them to be. I really like this method. I also know that my interns are going to be available for pretty much every single wedding, so I don't have to worry about finding someone like on Facebook or in a community group, things like that. So I know that they're going to be consistent. I know that they're going to be available. So that's one way you could tackle it, hiring interns in your business that are a little bit younger, less experienced, and people that can actually be really consistent in your business, which I would definitely recommend. So I fall kind of like on the spectrum of wanting someone that is just really willing. They don't necessarily have to have a lot of experience, but they're really willing. Now that's coming from someone who's been in the industry for 8+ years. So I'm really confident in my own skills. So if for some reason, and this really hasn't happened to me at all, but if for some reason that second shooter is not performing really well, they're not doing their job really well, I'm confident enough in my skills that I know that my photos are going to turn out amazingly. And if needed, I'm just going to use my own photos and theirs are just going to be like a wash, if that makes sense, and that's totally okay. So you might not be at that level yet. You might be in the very first years of your business and you might want to shoot with someone who is more experienced so that you can feel like they've got your back in case you're not doing it right. That's totally understandable. That could be another way that you can think about it. Also, you want to make sure that you're thinking about how much they're going to have to be on their own. Is there a time on the wedding day where you guys are going to have to split up? Is there going to be 2 separate getting ready locations, one for the bride, one for the groom, and you're going to have to split up? If so, then you're going to make sure that that photographer is really confident shooting by themselves on the wedding day. I also think another key factor is their personality. And this goes beyond just willingness, but it's their personality, how you guys vibe together, what it's like working together. And you're only going to know this if you've worked with them before or if you talk to them in person. So I would definitely encourage meeting up with someone that you're trying to hire as a second shooter, or at least get a recommendation from someone that you know and trust and like, to say like, hey, yeah, they're awesome to work with. They have a great personality. You definitely don't want a situation where you're feeling like you're having to entertain your clients, you're entertaining the guests, and you're also having to keep track of and entertain your second shooter. That's going to make for a really exhausting day where you feel really burnt out. It's happened to me before where I feel like I have to like get a hold of my second shooter and like make sure they're okay and like taken care of. Along those same lines, you want to choose someone that can be really teachable. So is it someone that's going to take your advice and actually listen to it and implement it? Or is it someone that's just going to be like, oh, I know better. She doesn't know what she's talking about. I'm just going to do my own thing. Because if this is your wedding, the responsibility is on you ultimately. And so you need to have someone that you're partnering with that understands that responsibility and who is respectful of that. That is so, so important. I mean, just point blank, the onus does not stop with that second shooter. If it's your own wedding, the onus is on you. And so they need to understand and respect that and be willing to accept teachable things from you and, you know, recommendations and guidance. Obviously, you don't want to just like boss them around all day and make them feel dumb. There's obviously a line there, but you definitely are in charge when it's your wedding and they need to know that and respect that. A couple other things to consider when you're choosing a second shooter. It's a great idea to look at their website, their portfolio, their social media, beforehand, just to kind of see a vibe for their work, see how they shoot, see how they edit. I know editing really isn't a part of second shooting, so that's not a huge deal, but just kind of seeing like how they do their thing is so beneficial. You could even ask for several full wedding galleries to see how proficient they are in shooting a full wedding day. Another thing that you could do is ask about their equipment that they have. So are you going to have to provide equipment for them? Or are they going to have their own camera and the necessary lenses and flashes? That's another thing to consider. Last thing I want to say here is that you pretty much can shoot the wedding yourself. I know if you're just starting out and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I've never shot a wedding before, or this is my second wedding ever and I'm a little bit scared, I'm a little bit nervous, I need a second shooter. Definitely, that's okay. It's okay even if even if your couple doesn't even hire a second shooter and you just want someone there to like be moral support and kind of shoot with you and just kind of be there for you, I think that's great. I love having someone work with me. Even if my couples don't hire a second shooter, sometimes I even just bring my intern because I like having someone there to be able to just help and fill in the gaps and also just be like a resource for me to just talk to throughout the day, because otherwise I just feel alone. But all that said, all that aside, I can shoot every single wedding day by myself, hands down, and you can too. And you don't absolutely need a second shooter. I don't think it's necessary. Now, it's great for certain moments like the first kiss, entrances into the reception, and the sparkler exit. It's really nice to have different angles during some of those key moments that you don't really want to repeat. I mean, obviously you could repeat them if you wanted to, but if you're a good photographer, you're probably not going to want to repeat those, and that could be another controversial little tidbit I'm giving you. And I'm not saying you're a bad photographer if you repeat those moments to get them, but I personally just like to get them like one and done, capture them. So it's a great time for a second shooter to have another angle, especially for the first kiss. If you're zoomed up really close and they're far out, they can get a couple different shots for you, which is really nice. But for the most part, you can shoot the wedding day yourself. One last thing I want to leave you with is that even though it shouldn't be a big deal, I want to stress the importance of having a contract in place. And having a contract for your second shooter is so, so important. I have a contract template shop for photographers and creatives. It's called legallycreative.com. And you can actually go on there. You can get a second shooter contract template already made for you. You just input your business info in it. It's super easy. It's attorney drafted by me, so you definitely know that you're being protected. But it is so important to have a contract. I cannot stress this enough. Even if it's a friend, a close friend, you definitely want to have a contract in place to protect both of you. So things you're going to want to put in your contract are the terms of the agreement, how much they're getting paid, how many hours they're shooting with you, what they should wear, what they can expect in terms of food. If there's any ambiguity at all, you want to spell it out really clearly in the contract. You also want to talk about how they're going to get those images to you, whether they can share those images on social media or not, if they have to give you credit when they do share, how everything's going to work from start to finish needs to be in that contract, and they need to sign that before you guys get started in the relationship. So that's super, super important. I left that till the end because that is literally the most important thing. If you have not learned anything at all in this video, that absolutely is something that you need to do. So if you're hiring a second shooter, make sure that you have a contract. Thanks for joining me this week on Self Starter Podcast. If you enjoyed the video version of this podcast, be sure to leave me a big thumbs up and subscribe down below so you don't miss any future uploads. And we're also going to be talking about hiring in your business in the future. I think that's a big hot topic that a lot of people want to hear about. So if that is something that you're interested in, definitely leave a comment below, let me know. But next week we're going to be talking about how to hire an associate in your photography business, which is, I think, a super great tool, a great resource for you, and something that a lot of people don't really know how to do. So we're going to unpack that next week. Definitely make sure to come back next week on Monday. Until then, have a great week, and I will see you in the next video.